Jasodanandana Brajajana Rahanchana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Gopi Janabalabha Girivanadari Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astatata Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Astatata Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Nantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Chako Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Uttapādaya Krishna Sarvadaya Shakti Bhakti Vasani Dinamani Namaste Saraswati Namaste Starting. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Okay. Thank you. Okay, today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 13th chapter, 36th verse. Just a second. Srak tuṇḍa āsīt sruva isha nāsayor iḍodare camasāḥ karṇa-randhre prāśitram āsye grasane grahās yes carvaṇaṁ te bhagavann agni-hotram srak tuṇḍa āsīt sruva isha nāsayor iḍodare camasāḥ karṇa-randhre prāśitram āsye grasane grahās Yach carvaṇaṁ te bhagavann agni-hotram. Please chant. Āsīt, sruva, nāsayor. tuṇḍa sruva nāsayor. Ladies. Synonyms: srak, the plate for sacrifice. tuṇḍe, on the tongue. Āsīt, there is. Sruva, another plate for sacrifice. Isha, O Lord. Nāsayoḥ, of the nostrils. Iḍa, the plate for eating. Udare, in the belly. Camasāḥ, another plate for sacrifices. karṇa-randhre, in the holes of the ears. prāśitram, the plate called the Brahmā plate. Āsye, in the mouth. Grasane, in the throat. Grahāḥ, at plates known as soma plates. Tu, but. Te, your. Yat, that which. Carvaṇaṁ, chewing. Te, your. Bhagavann, O my Lord. Agni-hotram, is your eating through your sacrificial fire. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I just realized we didn't chant Om Namo Bhagavate, so excuse me for missing that verse. We'll do it now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. I'm not used to giving class. It's been a year, so you have to forgive me for forgetting the procedure. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice. And another plate of sacrifice is the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahmā plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the plate of sacrifice known as soma. And whatever you chew is known as agni-hotra. Please repeat. O Lord, your tongue is a plate of sacrifice. Your nostril is another plate of sacrifice. In your belly is the eating plate of sacrifice. And another plate of sacrifice is the holes of your ears. In your mouth is the Brahmā plate of sacrifice. Your throat is the plate of sacrifice known as soma. And whatever you chew is known as agni-hotra. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedavadis say that there is nothing more than the Vedas and the performances of sacrifice mentioned in the Vedas. They have recently made a rule in their group to formally observe daily sacrifice. They simply ignite a small fire and offer something whimsically, but they do not strictly follow the sacrificial rules and regulations mentioned in the Vedas. It is understood that by regulation there are different plates of sacrifice required, such as srak, sruva, barhis, agni-hotra, iḍodare, camasāḥ, prāśitram, grahās, and agni-hotra. One cannot achieve the results of sacrifice unless one observes the strict regulations. In this age, there is practically no facility for performing sacrifices in strict discipline. Therefore, in this age of Kali, there is a stricture regarding such sacrifices. It is explicitly directed that one should perform sankirtana-yajna and nothing more. The incarnation of the Supreme Lord is Yagneshvara, and unless one has respect for the incarnation of the Lord, he cannot perfectly perform sacrifice. In other words, taking shelter of the Lord and rendering service unto him is the factual performance of all sacrifices, as explained herein. Different plates of sacrifices correspond to the different parts of the body of the Lord's incarnation. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, it is explicitly directed that one should perform sankirtana-yajna to please the Lord's incarnation as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This should be rigidly followed in order to achieve the result of yajna performance. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So in this purport, twice Srila Prabhupada has said that the sankirtana-yajna is the yajna for this age in order to please Lord Chaitanya. So with your permission, I would like to try to glorify Srila Prabhupada, because he is the Jagat Guru. He is the guru of the universe. And honestly, I am not a philosopher. I cannot give you background really on this verse, but I can share with you Srila Prabhupada, or try to share some of Srila Prabhupada's glories, because I'm in a reading group, ladies reading group from Alachua, Florida, and we are reading the Lilamrita. We have read through the entire Lilamrita once, and we started again. It was like reading a new book. So if there's anybody who hasn't read the Lilamrita, this is the way to really get to know Srila Prabhupada. Is there anybody who hasn't read the Lilamrita? Oh my goodness. Well, please find a copy. The full-length book is 7 volumes. There is a condensed version just called Prabhupada. But it's just incredible, because Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at one Ultadanga Road, which I just happened to have visited for the first time a few days ago, and I invite you all to visit. I cannot get that place out of my mind. It's so potent. It's where Srila Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta on the roof of that building. And before he even had a chance to pay his obeisances and get up, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was instructing Srila Prabhupada. He was with his friend, and he said, "You boys are educated young men. I want you to spread Krishna consciousness in the West in the English language." And that instruction became Srila Prabhupada's mission in life. And no one else can take the credit. Prabhupada achieved this. So my perspective is that Srila Prabhupada struggled like anything in his life. And when he came to the West, he chose to come to America because, first of all, his godbrothers had tried spreading Krishna consciousness in London. They weren't successful, so Prabhupada thought, let me try a new place. And he knew that America, when people in America do something the rest of the world wants to do it too. They're like leaders in many senses. So he came to the most degraded part of the world, really, and his success was among the, you could say, degraded youth of America who are very disgruntled with life. And we also had this, we had the young youth, of which I was one, had this mantra, don't trust anybody over 30. And Srila Prabhupada was 70. But he was not like anybody had ever met before. We could trust him. But the point is that Srila Prabhupada's followers were very young and accepted Srila Prabhupada's philosophy. And whereas Prabhupada had been so unsuccessful in India preaching, he had started the League of Devotees. It just didn't take off. He wasn't able to get the buildings which he thought he was going to get. I mean, he just hit a brick wall time and time again. And I just want to remind everybody in Mayapur that Prabhupada found success among the Westerners and brought them to India. He called us his dancing white elephants. And slowly, you know, the philosophy that Srila Prabhupada is presenting has made inroads in the Indian population, and now so many Indians are joining that I get the feeling that sometimes the Indian community thinks, okay, we don't need the Westerners anymore, we're good. But it's not like that. We're all in this together. And I wanted to share with you a lecture. It's very short. Well, it was an arrival address. When Prabhupada arrived here in Mayapur in January of 1976, I happened to be living here, and I remember having a kirtan in front of the front gate. I want you to understand that Mayapur at that time, at the front gate, there was nothing. No stores. Maybe during a festival time, there's a tea stall or two, and maybe a few rickshaws, but normally there was nothing outside the front gate. So we were waiting for Prabhupada's arrival, and there's no cell phones. We didn't know exactly when he was going to arrive. So we had a kirtan waiting for him, and I just remember feeling the camaraderie, the love for the other devotees. We were from so many different backgrounds. Okay, there wasn't many of us. Like, first of all, Mayapur population was about 100 devotees. So there wasn't many of us, but still, I remember that kirtan, mostly because when Prabhupada finally arrived, he inaugurated the front gate. There had been a front gate, but then all the decoration and the plaster and the paint and everything looking very, very nice. So he was given a pair of scissors, he cut a ribbon, you know, it was like in a ceremony kind of thing. And then he walked straight down the path. There was a path from the front gate directly to the temple, which was on the first floor of the Lotus building. So the path was straight. When he got near the temple, there was a couple of the ladies who were upstairs one flight and sprinkled flowers on his head. And then he went into the temple and gave an address, you know, arrival address. It was very short. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact words, or I'd read it. It is in a book I wrote called Srila Prabhupada is Coming, and I don't have any copies with me in Mayapur. But the point that he made was, this is the United Nations. Where the United Nations has failed, we are actually doing. This is the real United Nations. And so that was like, he totally captured that feeling that I had, that we're a real society. And it isn't that, you know, we can make any discrimination. I intended to start my class by acknowledging my late husband, Ganagamya Das, for establishing ladies giving Bhagavatam class once a week. And I want to say this was entirely his idea. It wasn't like I was, you know, henpecking him and asking him to arrange this. Totally not. Totally. he wanted to do it because he saw the value of hearing from the ladies. And I've learned that in America, the native so-called Indians or Native Americans, it was the elder ladies, what they call the wise women who are past childbearing age, who were the ones who chose the next chief when their chief was either too old or had died. It was the wise women because they knew and understood the boys who had grown up in that community, and they knew who was actually a leader and who wasn't. And it isn't always like it seems. But anyway, women have certain qualities like intuition and nurturing and things like that. So there's always value to hearing from the lady side. And in most ISKCON temples, ladies give class way more than once a week. Just saying. Hare Krishna. I also want to make a public service announcement about flowers on Prabhupada's head during Guru Puja. I had a personal experience in New Vrindavan where I had a basket of flower petals and flowers, and I had the service of throwing petals in front of Prabhupada as he walked at a festival called the Bhagavad Dharma Discourses. It was in August, September of 1972. And as I was performing this service, which was extremely nectarian, being a few feet from Prabhupada, throwing the flowers, a man, who's, I sort of remember as an Indian man who's not part of ISKCON necessarily, but he reached into my basket and grabbed a whole handful of flowers and threw them on Prabhupada's head. And Prabhupada did not like it. He brushed them off, and I think he might have wagged his finger. Whatever it was clear he did not like flowers on his head. So we need to communicate this to people in our community, because every day at Guru Puja, people are throwing flowers on the small murti of Prabhupada. And we should teach our children not to do this and somehow spread the word. Okay, that's my public service announcement. So, okay, so what I want to say is that Srila Prabhupada was brilliant. He was really brilliant because the way he went about fulfilling his mandate from his guru was really brilliant. I have heard that some of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers had criticized him for going to the West and preaching to Malechas, as if you have to be a low-class person to do that. And in fact, it was exactly the opposite, that Prabhupada had the mandate, which was given to all of Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples to spread Krishna consciousness, and he's the one who did it. There's just no way around it. Like, there's, over the years, there's been people in other societies who have criticized or who have taken people away from Srila Prabhupada's movement, and we have to understand how extraordinary Srila Prabhupada was. As I say, he was really brilliant, because when he first came to New York, well, it was he didn't just come to New York. He went to Butler, Pennsylvania, and then to New York. But he was so lenient. He didn't come and say, well, you have to do this rule and that rule and the other rule, and then who would have stayed? He just like spoon-fed us, gradually, giving people a taste of chanting the holy name, and just slowly giving us the details as soon as we were able. It was like raising children. You have to be step by step what they can handle. There's a process, and Prabhupada was just totally expert. Like, one of the things he did was allow women to become devotees. And this alone, I've heard it said, was one of the reasons for Prabhupada's success. And I don't think he intended that. He just saw the mood that the men and women, girls and boys were freely associating, and, why stop that? Just make it open to everyone. So, with your permission, I would like to just share with you Mayapur as I experienced it in 1975 when I first came here. I had heard about the Gurpurnim festival of 1974. I know there was previous ones, but I wasn't aware of them until 1974. And I really, really wanted to come to India, but somehow it wasn't able to come. And so when I was given permission to come in 1975, I was very eager to come to India. And my experience was sort of, you could say, falling in love with Bengal even before we got to Mayapur. Just on the bus ride from the airport, just seeing all the greenery, the palm trees, and there was, every village had their little pukur. I could see people washing their clothes or bathing in the pukur. They were, from my memory, they were clean. Maybe not so today. But yeah, when I got to Mayapur, all that it was here, as far as buildings, was the Lotus building, the boundary wall, which wasn't stores, they were rooms devotees stayed in. Then there was the Bhajan, Prabhupada's Bhajan Kutir, which was much simpler than it is today. And then there was what we called the big kitchen. Now it's called the Sulabh kitchen. And then the prasadam hall. And the only source of prasadam was the prasadam hall. So, for that first festival, the devotees were about 400 devotees from around the world. And we participated in the 24-hour kirtan, which was going on in the temple room. The temple room was the first floor of the Lotus building. Everybody knows that, right? It was the first floor. Like where Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana is right now is pretty much where the altar was, but the deities were facing the road. And Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana was at the other end of the temple, kind of where the inquiry office is. And it was behind the Prabhupada's Vyasasana was the pujari room. Jananivas Prabhu, aided by Pankajangri Prabhu, were the head pujaris. And then there was another devotee named Anaka Dandabi, who addressed the deities also. So this community in Mayapur, well, first I came to the festival, and it was only a few months later I came here to live. Jayapataka Maharaj wanted so many positions filled. Mayapur was just needed help. And I, at that time, was in the Mumbai temple, Juhu temple, and he came there asking for help. And one of the devotees from Australia wanted to come here and be a teacher. That was needed. But at the last minute, and I wanted to come here too, but that other devotee had been in Bombay longer. She got priority. But at the last minute, that devotee changed her mind. And so I was next on the list, and I got to come here to be Jayapataka Maharaj's secretary, which meant that my office was on the back veranda of the Lotus building. So that meant I wasn't inside a room. I was just on the veranda, and I just put my typewriter on top of its hard case and type letters. So I was the temple secretary and his personal secretary. So at that time, like I said, it was about 100 devotees, out of which maybe 25 were Western men from many different countries and 6 Western women. So when we prepared for Srila Prabhupada's arrival, he would come before the Gurpurnim festival, like in early January. I didn't expect that Prabhupada's sister would also come here. Now, she's his younger sister, 3 years younger. We called her Pishima, although we found out sometime later that her real name was Bhavatarini. She looked like Srila Prabhupada, like a feminine version of Srila Prabhupada. And of all his relatives, she totally accepted him as Jagatguru. She saw him the way we did. She had awe and reverence for him. And I somehow got to be her personal servant, only because the other ladies, for some reason, didn't want to. And I thought there'd be competition, but there wasn't any. I just got to do it. And she was an amazing personality, always had nice things to say about other people, even if they weren't being nice to her. But anyway, there's many stories I could tell you about Pishima, but I'll just tell you one story, because there was Srila Prabhupada. This might be, I get mixed up between when Prabhupada came in 76 and 77, so this might be 77. He was being restricted in his diet because of his health, and Pishima wanted to cook for him, but the devotees who were cooking for him was stopping her from cooking, just because he wasn't eating any kind of oil or ghee or anything, any kind of oil. So it disturbed her so much that she went to speak to Srila Prabhupada when Prabhupada was on the roof one day taking his massage. And that was really difficult for her because she wasn't well herself and had a hard time walking, especially upstairs, which I can totally relate to now, being 78 years old. And she couldn't explain to me why she wanted to see Srila Prabhupada, but I just had to help her up the stairs. And then she talked to him, and I'm pretty sure what she was saying was she wanted to cook for him, and she wanted his permission. Okay? By the way, she only knew 2 words in English: water and wash. That was it. Well, she could say 1 to 10, but it sounded like one word. You know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But anyway, water and wash exemplified her personality. She was very, very clean. Devotees used to come up to me and complain that Pishima had doused them with Ganga water from head to toe, or at least their bead bag. She could see contamination where no one else could see it. And anyway, about the story about cooking. So it was several days later that someone came to tell us that Pishima could cook an evening offering for Srila Prabhupada. He didn't always eat in the evening, but sometimes. So first she had me go to the room we were staying in and get this big bottle of mustard oil. And then she went into the kitchen and she cooked kach kela sabji, like green plantain sabji. And, you know, then she went back to her room and they brought the plate up to Srila Prabhupada. And normally when Srila Prabhupada's remnants would come back down into the Prabhupada's little kitchen, which was on the first floor of the Lotus building, next to the deity kitchen. And so I would be in the kitchen with Vrindavan Biharini, the wife of Anakandandavi Prabhu, and we'd be cleaning up at night after cooking the evening offering, and Prabhupada's plate would go down, and normally there would be so many devotees who just somehow got it on their radar that Prabhupada's Maha was available. That day, there was nobody. It was amazing. We could have eaten it all of his remnants. However, this sabji was so full of mustard oil that we, you know, I'm sure we honored it, but we couldn't really eat it. We couldn't even actually tell if Srila Prabhupada had eaten it. Presumably he tasted it, but I think he mostly was just pleasing his sister because she had such a desire to cook for him. Anyway, we were able to distribute that Maha sabji to the men, the Bengali men who were chanting the 24-hour kirtan in the temple, and they, of course, loved it. So a good ending to that story, right? Let's see. One of the things that I remember was that Prabhupada had told one of the co-managers, Bhavananda Swami at that time, he said, "I have given you Mayapur to enjoy," which is an unusual statement. But I don't think he meant sense gratification. He just meant that Mayapur is so beautiful and so powerful spiritually. But he also meant that Mayapur used to have the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets over the Ganga. Somehow, I don't know if it's pollution or what is going on, but for years, it seems we have a lot of fog, and especially in the mornings, and we can't see the beauty of the sunrise. Okay, I want to get back to Prabhupada's arrival and what happened like the next day. So our schedule is a little different than it is now as far as when the Bhagavatam class was and greeting the deities. But in any case, after the whole morning program was over, Jananivas Prabhu brought a plate with all the Mangalarti sweets on it. He gave it to Srila Prabhupada, who tasted some prasadam, and then he started distributing it. First to the Gurukula boys who were surrounding him. They're mostly, actually all, Bengali, sons of the Bengali devotees who lived here. And then, people, the men were coming up with their hand out for prasadam, and Prabhupada started breaking the sweets into smaller pieces and distributing them. And so the next day, Jananivas Prabhu brought the plate of maha earlier while Prabhupada was still on the Vyasasan after Guru Puja. And so this became a daily thing that Prabhupada would distribute, and he kept on breaking the pieces into smaller and smaller, the pieces of prasadam. And he would distribute first to the Gurukula boys, then to the men, and then if there was still some left, the 6 of us Western women would get the prasadam. The Bengali ladies were actually doing service in the kitchen because Prabhupada saw that if you gave them beads to chant on, they would just sit down and talk to each other. And so he said, your japa is kitchen seva. However, he did initiate all of them. 2 ladies could chant, and he not only gave first, but he gave second initiation. Anyway, a lot of mercy. So, yeah, that was very, very sweet. When Prabhupada would distribute Mahaprasadam, he would push it into your palm. He wouldn't just drop it. He would push it into your palm. Really sweet. Then, besides all these devotees I've described, there was 2 little Western boys who were about 3 years old. One was English. He was the son of Swati. His name was Shivajwara. And then a little boy named Damodar, who was the son of Rasa Manjari from Australia. So these 2 little boys would station themselves right at Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasan, which, by the way, is the same Vyasasan. The marble is the same Vyasasan. Hasn't changed. The cloth has, maybe, but not the Vyasasan. So they would just stand there with their hand out. And when Prabhupada would put some prasadam in it, they'd pop it in their mouth, brush their hand against their sika, and hold out the hand again. And Prabhupada just thought this was hilarious. And he even turned to somebody and said, "Where did they learn this?" We think it's because people would take karṇa-randhre and then wipe their hand on their sika. Anyway, that was really fun to watch. And he would give them multiple times, 3-4 times. He would give them prasadam. They were very cute. Okay, my memory is really bad. I have to write things down. Okay. So one of the points that was very much driven into us was we should not go visit the other temples in Mayapur, except as a group. Like during Kor Purnim, as a group, we can go to the different mandirs. We'll sit down and hear the pastimes and background, and that was okay. But on our own, we're not supposed to go. And it was reiterating what Prabhupada had written to Rupanuga in a letter in 1974. Letters often got distributed throughout the entire society, at least in America, because they were always so instructive. So it wasn't just like a personal letter, it's for me. No, it's like, this is an instruction to everyone. So he had said in this letter, basically the message was, do not mix with my godbrothers, Prabhupada was telling us. He said, and it was very explicit. He said, don't go to their temples, don't take their prasadam, don't read their books. You know, it was just super clear. And that has really stayed with me, that concept. And it's to me, it's part of being true to Prabhupada, being faithful to Srila Prabhupada. I mean, he did tell Mukunda Maharaj way back when Mukunda Maharaj was put up to speak to Prabhupada. The other devotees kind of forced him to say, Srila Prabhupada, if he was going to come to India and they weren't sure they're going to see him again. And they said, so if you don't come back, can we take shelter of your godbrothers? And as soon as he said that to Prabhupada, he realized that was not the right thing to say. Prabhupada was silent for a very long time. And finally, like with tears in his eyes, he said, my guru has saved me. And then another long silence. And then he said, if they say one word different, there will be confusion among you. And we've seen that's exactly what has happened. So, anyway. So I wanted to share with you, like, one of the most ecstatic things of being in Mayapur when Prabhupada was here, and so few devotees, but all over India, wherever he was, he had open darshan every night. Now, compared to, like, my years in America before coming to India, was you rarely saw Prabhupada, even if he was at your temple. He rarely came to the temples. I mean, he tried to visit the temples and, constantly went around the world and visited the temples, but would see him maybe go on his morning walk, or at least the ladies, and then maybe coming back from the morning walk, and we'd hear him give Bhagavatam class. But we never got to go in his room. I mean, it had to be, the big guns got to go into his room, and so Prabhupada's mood was much more formal in the West, and rare, so rare to see him. But in Mayapur, or wherever he was in India, open darshan, anybody could come. And we still have those rooms here in the Lotus building on the second floor, way the Indians count. Second floor of the Lotus building. Has everybody visited Prabhupada's room? Has anybody not visited Prabhupada's room? Okay, good. You have to go see Prabhupada's room. It's pretty much preserved the way it was. The book display came later. There's a very big book display. There used to be a painting there. And a lot of Prabhupada's paraphernalia is there. At the time, they weren't on the display shelves, but everything that's on the walls is exactly what was there. When Prabhupada would take off his garland, he often would tell his servant to put it on this beautiful carving of Radha and Krishna, a wooden, three-dimensional carving that's still there. And so, anyway, Bhishima wanted to go to this darshan. Even though she didn't speak English, she wanted to go every night. So I had a great excuse to go every night. And one of the things that happened is that they, okay, I don't want to repeat something I just recently said. Okay, one of the things that happened was the pujaris would, when it got dark, the pujaris would come around with burning charcoals with frankincense on them. And they would blow conch shells and have lit incense, and they would start at the top of the Lotus building. And we could hear the conch shell blowing, and we could, bell ringing, and it would get louder and louder till they came down to the Prabhupada's room, and then they'd come inside Prabhupada's room, and all the conversation would stop, and they would just let the smoke billow into the room. It would help with mosquitoes and other insects. And Prabhupada really appreciated this. And it was just so transcendental. And often the lights would go out, as they often do, even now. But it happened a lot more back then, that the lights would go out. And then you're in the dark, and then with the charcoal burning, and wow, it was all so mystical and transcendental. So I'll tell you, am I running out of time? I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about Prabhupada's rooms. So one day, I had been at the darshan and then brought Pishima back to her room. And then I was telling Vrindavan Biharini, this is before I was cooking the evening offering. I was going every night. And Vrindavan Biharini was on the veranda, and she had been cooking. She had missed the darshan, and she was asking me what Prabhupada had said. So I'm standing there telling her what Prabhupada said. And Bhavananda Maharaj comes down the stairs and sees me and says, "Do you have the list of all the foreign devotees and their passport numbers and all that?" And because I was temple secretary, I collected all that information. But I wasn't always up to date. People were coming and going. And so I said, I don't have it up to date, but I can do that by tomorrow morning. And he said, okay, I want you to go back up to Prabhupada's room and tell him that. Because the FRO man, the Foreign Registration Office from Krishnanagar, he's there talking to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada had told us to leave because at 6 o'clock was evening arti. And we could hear it very clearly because we were just in the same building. And so that's how our darshan would end. He would tell us to leave. But if there was guests, they would stay on. So he had told us to leave, and I'm coming back in, so I felt a little awkward. I just offered my obeisances right at the door on the straw mat, but I didn't sit down on the mattress. I just sat there on my knees and just looked at Srila Prabhupada and waited for the conversation to end. So then he looked at me like, "Why are you back here?" I don't think he said that, but just gave me that look, like, "Explain yourself, why you're here." And so I said my little thing, that Bhavananda told me, like, I have the passport numbers and all that information, and it would be ready in the morning, the next day. And so this FRO man, who I really don't remember what he looked like, but I have a mental vision, perhaps of a little, like, mustache and beady eyes, and he just looked at me in a sort of nasty way, and then he looks at Srila Prabhupada and like, "Who is she?" And in that moment, I was like, what is Srila Prabhupada going to say? I mean, we always wanted to be noticed by Srila Prabhupada, but does he really know who I am? And he said, "She is the secretary." And I was so happy. It's just, I sort of can compare it a little bit to, in the Lilamrita, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, there was a time when Satsvarup Maharaj, who wrote the Lilamrita, he shared a story about how he missed the first initiation. He didn't think he was qualified. He just thought, I'll just keep on serving Prabhupada by typing that he asked him to do. And then when he saw Prabhupada after that first initiation, Prabhupada talked to him about getting initiated, and he said to Satsvarup Maharaj, "If you love me, I love you." Like, it's a reciprocation. And then he describes in Lilamrita how he, after that talk with Prabhupada, he said he went dancing down the streets of New York. And so I felt like that, like so exuberated. I hope you don't think of it as like a pop star kind of relationship. It was just so awe and reverence, just appreciating Srila Prabhupada. like I said, was hoping to say how brilliant Prabhupada was. I hope I glorified him sufficiently. And I thank you very much for letting me talk about Srila Prabhupada instead of being a philosopher, which I'm not. I'm more of a who's who in ISKCON and Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, corrections, anything? Hare Krishna. Rameshwar Prabhu.
I just wanted to echo something that you said, and then I have a second comment about the purport. The mood of the devotees around Srila Prabhupada was not just awe, but we all felt so insignificant. And just, if Prabhupada would say one word to a devotee, like he said, she is the secretary, that would be, oh my God. It would be like God knows me, Prabhupada knows me. It would be the most unbelievable feeling. I had a similar experience, so I could relate to that, because we never thought that Prabhupada would notice any of us. So there was is a very special type of pastime that you shared with us. Thank you. In this purport, when Prabhupada starts writing about the yajna and the rules for yajna, he specifically mentions that there's a class of people all over India, what do they call, the Vedavamsis or something like that. But every religion in the world has their Vedavamsis. People who just study the scriptures to find out what the rules are, and they just follow rules without any comprehension, without any revelations, without any realizations, and they're just rules for the sake of rules, which does not lead to spiritual enlightenment. And every religion has them. Throughout all the different Christian denominations, especially in the Jewish religions, and here in India, in Hinduism, and certainly in the Islamic faith. So it's very nice to realize that higher than just following rules just for the sake of following the rules is to comprehend what sacrifice should be done that actually pleases my spiritual master and Krishna. And then Prabhupada shifted in the purport to sankirtana-yajna, but I just started thinking, every religion has their Vedavamsis. It's like almost that's what all religions are in the world right now. Nobody's enlightened, inspired, like effulgent, representing God as much as they're just rules for the sake of rules. So that's what we are preaching against. Not against, but that's what we're trying to bring to a higher platform. Every religion is stuck, and it's our role to make them rise. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Yes, Bhaktisiddhanta here asked also some other disciples to go to the West, and in 1932 actually some did it. Hridai Bon Maharaj, and he also established a temple in London, and also he brought some people to India. I think this Sadananda Maharaj, yeah, I think so. Yeah, so, but it was not the time also, because then later when Swami Prabhupada came, then, Vietnam War and flower power, and so it was just the right time. And he also asked, Bhaktisiddhanta also asked Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj to go. But he said, no, I'm not the right man, I'm okay. I go if you tell me, if you order me, I go, but I'm not the right man, I'm not so outgoing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was ecstatic. sharing. It's the most nectarian thing to hear Prabhupada's pastimes. Thank you so much. My question is, you mentioned that Srila Prabhupada instructed us not to go to the other mats in here. Of course, we understand that, but at the same time, we also, sometimes people come to Mayapur for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they may want to go, just visit the yoga peat, not to sit down and hear and take prasadam associate, but just to associate with the place of Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Is there some distinction we can make between, associating in that way and going to give reverence to like the yoga peat or Srivasangam and so forth?
Well, I know times have changed. We should go to these holy places, but just, don't buy their books and don't, just follow the instructions Prabhupada gave us.
Yeah, of course we don't. But I'm just clarifying that visiting is something different from associating or like buying books and hearing classes and so forth.
Yeah, we have to adjust to the times. Back then we thought the only way to come to India was as a huge group. We didn't even know the concept of like buying your own ticket. That evolved obviously, but.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Mataji, like during that time, Prabhupada's time, the other temples were god brothers, his god brothers. So maybe that's why also Prabhupada warning.
Right. Yes, there's many things that happened back in the day, but yeah. The principle is there. Better not to mix. That was the point of that letter that Prabhupada wrote in 1974. So, yes, Sri Devi.
Thank you, Mahamaya Mataji. It was so nectarian, as Prabhu said. It's so wonderful to hear from Srila Prabhupada disciples about Srila Prabhupada. So thank you very much for that. And as you were relating how things were, we got the sense that there was such a sweet mood of friendship, camaraderie, association, helping one another, and so on. And of course, that happens because it's a small group. Now we have swelled into, gigantic proportions, and we don't know each other. We all come, we all go, but it's just because of the size and the numbers, we've become quite impersonal. We don't really know who the other person is or have relationships. So I was just wondering if you could give us some guidelines or tips on how to develop that sweet mood so that we can grow together. Spiritual life is association. Without strong association, we're not going to make it. So just wondering if you can just help us with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Well, I'm definitely a big believer in small group association. The example we have is Chopati Temple, who many years ago attempted to share their system of mentor groups here in Mayapur. Unfortunately, at that time, that was in the 1990s, I believe, some of their devotees came and tried to implement it, and for some reason it didn't really get accepted. But it's still the way to feel like you're part of a family. Actually, in Chopati, their groups are like 50 people, which is huge. And yet, they get results that those devotees become very close to one another. They really get to know them, get to know each other, and it's very supportive. Now, in the West, we say that a support group, the ideal size is 8 people. And I've belonged to one that we have a big one. It's like 11 people. And we've been going for many years. And you get to say, you can reveal your heart to people you trust. And so the point that my experience is in the group, we want to become so close to each other that we can trust each other and share our heart, the deep recesses of our heart. You can't just do that with just anybody. It takes time to develop those relationships. So whether it's a small group or a bigger group, it really would be beneficial if we started groups. I mean, you don't even need like permission from anyone. You can just form your own groups. Just ask people that you know to meet with you. I mean, anybody can start a group. It's no secret method. And you can make your own rules, how you want the group to go. You know, in our group, we used to start off with somebody sharing a verse that struck them they had read that week, and they would explain why it impacted them, which, you know, we'd talk about it. Sometimes something had happened in the community that was very disturbing, and we'd just talk about that. But usually we just like check in. We do what we call check-in, just what's going on in your life and just sharing our lives. And it gives strength when you have people that you're close to. Back in the old days, I mean, Jamuna was describing to younger devotees that there was a family feel. It's not just Jamuna, but I think of her as like the mother of this god because she was so devotional. But it was a family feeling, you know, in our temple in the early days. And we can bring that back by somehow by having a small group of people, and then other people are in other groups. It becomes a family feeling. It just something you can think about and see. And you don't need permission from the temple authorities. You just say, you know, come to my house on such and such a day and such a time. And if that day and time and place doesn't work, you shift to something else. But you can just start the ball rolling and see the results. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.